Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 20 of Beating BDD. We've got a slightly special episode today because we're recording as part of the OCD Action and the BDD Foundation's joint virtual conference. And our interviewee is Elias Marchetti, who provided the story and voice for the brilliant Because I'm Ugly animation on the homepage of the BDD Foundation's website. Hi Elias, and welcome to the podcast. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So first, what made you decide to play such an active role, both in today's event and in video?
Well, basically because I found it really helpful when I had BDD to see other people's experiences and how they managed to beat it, because it gives you perspective. It goes, wait a minute, I'm not the only one who's been through this. There's other people who have been through similar, not the same, but maybe similar situations, and they've managed to beat the problem. And so if I can just speak out and realize that, wait a minute, you can actually do this, you're not on your own, there's people that can help, there are ways to beat it, then of course I was going to do my best, because even if one person manages to beat it because of what I've done, that's enough for me.
Where would you then say that you are with your recovery today?
Well, I think I'm recovered, really. I don't really have BDD. Of course, it's hard now because we wear masks because of COVID, but before COVID, I had no problems going out without any sort of, I'm just for context, my BDD was settled and sort of concentrate on my face. Mm-hmm. So I couldn't really sort of show my face before, but now, go around with spots, for example, here, I've got a spot there, but it doesn't matter anymore. I don't really care because, I've done progress through exposures.
Are there any other things you think you could do now that you could never have imagined yourself doing maybe 3 years ago?
Yeah, so I think just being as confident as I am now in who I am and what I look like. I think even before I knew I had a BD, I wasn't as confident in myself and how I look and what I can wear. Now I can just, my friend says, oh, would you like to go out? I just throw something on and go. Whereas before I had to plan, be ready. Now it's just, I can even get out of bed and go. Whereas even before I had BD, I couldn't imagine myself doing that.
Yeah, that's an almost unimaginable shift. I mean, if anyone had said to you 3 years ago, you're going to be able to do that, what would you have said?
I wouldn't have believed them.
Yeah.
Frankly, I would have said, no, it's not going to happen. Yeah. But it really is. I think it's frankly incredible how you don't realize it, but then it happens and you go, I couldn't believe that I was going to do it. But then you do it and you go, you become really proud of yourself. I'm really proud of myself.
Yeah, that's amazing. Would you be okay now then to talk us through your experience of BDD? So when it came on, how it manifested itself, how it affected your life, anything you want to tell us?
Yeah. So basically I started, I had BDD sort of at the last, sort of before half year, so lower sixth. So the second to last year of my upper school. It started sort of gradually in the sense, and then it just sort of spiraled pretty much. So I started wearing my glasses. I wear glasses. I'm not now because I'm not looking at anything, but I stopped wearing them completely in any setting, which was hard at school because I'd have to look at the whiteboard and stuff. And then started wearing lots of makeup. Then it sort of got worse. So I stopped going to school for some days. I started going late, started leaving early. When I couldn't feel, I'd go to the toilets in sort of lunch breaks and reapply makeup and things like that. And then it got to the point where it kept getting worse and worse. And so I couldn't even see my parents, really. Couldn't see my family. So I just stayed at home in my room. Couldn't have dinner with them. So I'd have dinner on my own. And it just sort of spiraled. And it got worse and worse to the point where, I couldn't really see anyone. And then I was admitted into the Priory, North London. So and that was an inpatient psych ward, and it was interesting because at the start, of course, I used to wear a scarf and a hat or a balaclava, so you could only see my eyes, you couldn't see anything else. And at that point, I'd been doing that for a while, for a really long time. And then one day in the Priory, I remember because I used to go to the adult section. So the adult, with the adults, because I was 17, so I could go with their sort of therapy sections. And so we had one with a speaker, and the speaker said, sometimes you just have to be brave. And I'd been having BDD for about a year and a bit. And so I thought, what, that's it. I'm going to take off the scarf and the hat. And I still had lots of makeup, but I'd been without the scarf and the hat. It was the first time in months, probably 5 months or so. And that was it. And I started getting better. And I think And I think it's that sort of point where you just realize, because there were lots of people my age, which was my biggest worry, was people my age. And I mean, I took the scarf and the hat off, and they were all incredibly supportive, and they were all really nice, and they were all, the people in the psych ward, they were all lovely. At that point, I thought, wait a minute, they don't find me ugly. That's not, because it clicked. And it's that, I think the thing is making the first click, and then it just keeps going. And of course, it might be something different for you. It might take longer, but I think it's just realizing that it's not you. So that's another thing I see. I compartmentalize the illness, which I think is another important thing. You just have to realize that it's not you that's having the intrusive thoughts, which are a big thing with BD. It's not you who's having the intrusive thoughts. It's the illness. So you don't have to beat yourself. You don't have to go, oh, it's my fault. It's not, because it's not you. So I think you should, believe in yourself. And I mean, it is corny, but it's true. Just that.
I guess with that as well, it also allows you to get a bit of distance from the thoughts themselves and question whether they're true. Because if you're saying these aren't actually my thoughts, these are the illness's thoughts, exactly. That's quite helpful. Are you able to identify what you think triggered BDD in you, or what you think the sort of predetermined factors might have been?
Yeah. I think because I was bullied a lot at school. And so at a point where basically I thought our school was a lot of people, about 180 in a year. It was lots of people. I didn't, it's hard to know all of them. So in lower sixth, a lot of new people joined, and I thought, oh, brilliant, I'm going to make new friends. I haven't really made new friends in these parts, you're 9, 10, 11, but there's still time. But then the old people told the new people that, it's not, don't be friends with them, And so that sort of, I didn't really make any new friends, and it sort of spiraled from there. I thought, it must be because I'm ugly. That's why they're not friends with me. And so that's how it kicked off.
We also had an interesting sort of pre-chat the other night where you talked about visual processing and the way that you tend to look at people's faces. It might be helpful for you to hear that. Yeah,
absolutely. So I have autism, so I find it quite hard to read people's expressions sort of naturally. So I have to concentrate on people's faces and go, I've learned it, see, now I can read people's expression, where I've learned it. But of course, that means I'm concentrating a lot on people's faces all the time. And so I think that's why I became focused on my face, because that's what I look at most in other people. So I thought, they must look at my face a lot as well, which I guess, but it's not as, I didn't realize that it was not to the level that I scrutinize people's face. I didn't judge people, but I think it's just the fact that I concentrated so much on the face meant that was what I focused on for my BDD worries.
And you could presumably see it. That would mean you could see a level of detail that someone without BDD wouldn't see.
Absolutely, and that's also why I stopped wearing my glasses. I had a bit of acne, and I still do a bit, but it doesn't worry me now. But I used to worry about it a lot. And of course, I don't have a big prescription; it's minor, whatever. But without the glasses, of course, it's all blurry, so you can't see as much. That's why I stopped wearing them. And so that was another thing, exactly, with the detail. If I didn't, stand so close to mirrors, because I used to go really close to a mirror and just sort of look at every sort of imperfection in the face and try to fix it with makeup or whatever. And so the fact that I didn't wear my glasses sort of helped in a sense, but of course it wasn't. It was a crutch. It was just a stopgap that wasn't actually helpful. It was just furthering the BDD.
It struck me what you were saying about not even being able to sit and have dinner with your family. How did they cope with that? Did they understand what was happening with you?
Yes, my family was very supportive. I have to be very thankful to them. Mum was the one that sort of figured out what it was. And I have to also thank my therapist. He was incredibly helpful, because, mum came to him and said, I think it's BDD. And he didn't dismiss her. He didn't say no. He said, oh, yes, I think you're right. And that's how it started. So it was all thanks to mum. But they found it hard, like any parent would, I think, having their child just be in that position, be having those issues. And I think they did their best, but I was pretty hard on them. And I don't know how, I think they coped quite well in the sense, but it's still, I think it was still really, I wouldn't want to be in their position, let's put it that way, because I genuinely couldn't see them. I just peek out the door, and if they weren't there, then it was just that kind of thing. And for them, they didn't quite understand in the sense, because they've never had any body image worries. So for them, sort of, it was hard to comprehend and put themselves in my shoes, as it were, and realize, that's why they're having these problems.
Yeah, and obviously, again, you look at someone you love and you just see someone you love, don't you? It's very hard to sort of understand how they don't see themselves in the same way.
Exactly, because they go, well, you're not ugly. We've
Mm,
never been ugly. Why do you say that? And it was
mm.
hard for them to realize that to me, that wasn't true.
And I mean, the bullying is such a common thread, sadly, in the development of BDD. But I mean, did you feel isolated at that point in your life in terms of friendship groups and
Yeah.
relationships outside the family?
Yes, I think so. And what? No, I don't think so. I
Mm,
did. Because people, they focus on bullying. They go, oh, it can bring upon, people. It's got lots of issues, but I think so many of them aren't widely sort of documented in the sense, of course, we know bullying is bad and it's obvious, but I would have never, we had bullying documentaries. We know what it was like in school. They always
mm,
talks about it, but they never talked about this kind of side effects, sort of brought upon body image issues by bullying. And I think maybe it's coming more to light in recent times, which I think is
mm.
wonderful. But it really is the fact that it's just really hard on the person who is on the receiving end of the bullying.
And I
And
think also it's 24/7 now because of social media. Whereas when I was at school, because I got bullied as well, but you could go home and just shut the door and no one could
yeah,
reach you unless they literally rang your
yeah,
landline and had to get past your mother. There was no other way of doing it. So that it's the intensity of it.
yes, absolutely. I was lucky. I don't really use social media that much. I just text
Mm.
people or call them. But I don't have really a Facebook profile or Instagram or Snapchat or anything like that. Not because of
Very
bullying.
wise.
I just don't like it.
Yeah.
Don't understand it, to be honest. But people now, and it sounds like sort of sort of complaining, but it's true, and you're absolutely right. And there's so many different social media and so many ways to bully someone,
Mhm.
not just sort of 24/7, but also so many different ways you can do it. And it's just that's quite concerning, I think, especially
Mm.
with apps that we go on a tangent, apps that allow you to edit people and so that the way they look, and then you can post photos, and then that I mean, if someone had done that to me, it would have been I think I would have been devastating, I think.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's there is, I think, quite worrying.
Mm. Yeah. It's not a cause, I don't think, but it definitely can exacerbate
Yes,
things,
absolutely.
can't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you've mentioned going and having treatment at the Priory, and what did that consist of, and what would you like to tell people about that in terms of what really
Well,
helped you?
it was quite, I mean, again, thanks to mum that she managed to get it, to get me into it, to get me actually inpatient. But it was, I think it's the most, well, not the motto that they had, but the thing that was there was they can't help you if you don't want to be helped. They can't force you to go out and do exposures. They can't, but I think you have to be willing, and you have to be willing to give it a shot. And I thankfully was, because I was really tired in a sense. I was just, because it take a toll on my head, and I was just very tired, and I couldn't really think properly because I was so worried about body image issues that I couldn't quite do anything else with my life, and I wanted to do other stuff. And so I was up for getting help, but it's very tough, and it does get easier. Now, I didn't realize, I didn't think and CBT is what I did. I did CBT for OCD as well as BDD, and it really is harder. And they show, I don't know if people here, my therapist, they show me a curve and they go, oh, this is what the stress levels. And then the next time you do it, the stress levels are lower, and then they're lower, and then they're lower. And it really is true. But again, CBT might not work well for everyone. And so there are other things you can try. Now, it worked well for me, so I'm very glad. But I think if it doesn't work well for you, don't despair and don't think that, it's over, because there are many other ways. And I think it's just that, a question of just sitting down and going, okay, let's try something else if this doesn't work. But I think it's just perseverance. And if you do regress, that's another thing. It's not just going to be a straight line upwards into getting better. There's bumps that you get worse, and some days you go great, and some days you feel bad and you don't feel like being able to do the things. And you can do smaller things, but it's still fine. It doesn't mean that you completely regressed. It's fine. And another thing that they told me at the end, and thankfully it hasn't happened to me, but they said it, is that sometimes after you leave the hospital, or after you finish the therapy, you can still relapse, and you shouldn't feel bad. It's not your fault. It just can happen. Thankfully, it hasn't happened to me, but it happens to people, and it shouldn't be. You shouldn't, tear yourself up if you think it's happening to you. You should just go and get help, and no one will judge you. That's the other thing in the hospital, or your therapist or anything. If you do have a day where it's bad, they're not going to judge you, because they're there to help you at the end.
Yeah, and they understand.
Yes,
They're very
absolutely.
well qualified in it. Would it be possible to give us an example of an exposure where you took things slowly and went from a position of complete
Yeah,
safety behavior into
yeah.
leaving safety behavior behind?
So for example, I couldn't wear scarf and hat. So I stopped wearing that. So that was one, but that was still within sort of the hospital unit. So the next thing was my therapist was the hospital was in a park, so we'd go around the park, and there were people, and I used to go close to people, look at people, make eye contact. Like I suppose it was weird for them, but it worked well for me because I was scared to make eye contact. And then steadily go on longer walks and wearing less and less makeup. And then we go on, because it was in London, we go on the tube. And then the latest one, when I tell the story, I can never remember the name of the department store, but it was a big department store in London, and it was full of people. And we went there and had lunch, and we had lunch at Pret. I ordered, and then we'd go around the department store and look at things and look at people, and it was packed. And I realized at that point, that was around towards the end of it. And I realized, wait a minute, no one is looking at me and judging me. I'm making eye contact. No one's, criticizing me. And I think the biggest one was on the way back, I talked to someone, a random stranger. I just started talking to them because that was part of the exposure. Therapist said, how about you try and talk to them? And it was this lovely elderly lady, and she was incredibly nice. And I thought, she's not judging me. It's just a lovely talk, and it's nice. And that really was really helpful because it made me realize it's just like talking to anyone, and they're not actually judging you because they don't, they're just talking to you.
Something else that I found really interesting when we chatted before was about you saying that actually exposures can get to a point where you can go beyond what someone else without BDD might actually be able to do or consider safe. Can you give me an example or explain what you meant by that?
Yeah, so I think exposures, you go a bit beyond your comfort. And of course, because you have BDD, your comfort level is quite low. And you go a bit beyond and a bit beyond, and your comfort level gets higher and higher and higher to the point where it was before. But what they do, at least to me, what happened was that we kept going even past that, so that if I did sort of lower my comfort level in the end, it would still be at the same level that it was. And to me, it hasn't. So my comfort level is up. For example, like I said at the start, even before I had BD, I was quite picky with my clothes. I didn't like baggy clothes. Wanted to look good, especially if seeing friends, and I didn't want to have like shoes that were mucky, and I thought, oh, that's embarrassing or something like that. Now, if a friend says, oh, Elias, do you want to go for a walk? Do you want to do something? I'll just put clothes on and go, and that's quite liberating. And I couldn't have done that before I had BDD, even at my normal levels, without having BDD. I just wasn't comfortable with that. And another, for example, is OCD. I couldn't touch the floor when I was OCD. I couldn't touch my pets. Couldn't touch the floor, couldn't touch anything. Lots of hand sanitizer, lots of cracked hands from incessant hand washing. And before even then, I didn't feel comfortable sitting on the floor on the street or doing stuff like that. And after I had BD, I went on a plane. This was before COVID. I went on a plane, and I was eating some crisps, and they fell on the floor of the plane, and I just ate them. I just picked them up and ate them. And I couldn't have done that before therapy. And my mum doesn't have OCD, doesn't it? She said, "Oh, I couldn't do that." It's the exposures. And it's really important to keep that going as well, because it's just another thing and another thing, and it really does help.
And like you said, I think that's a good example of Chris Mont, because it shows that these treatments can help you in other areas of your life with other sort of situations, can't they? That don't just relate to your BTD. So it's a set of tools that can really help you just become more resilient in general.
Yeah, and they tell you at the end when I got discharged, they told me, now you are your own therapist. Right, and it's absolutely true, because now you just have to be honest with yourself and go, oh, I'm a bit uncomfortable doing that. Let's do it. Let's go and do it. Oh, I have a spot here. I don't want to. Oh, let's do it. Let's turn the camera on and let's go for a walk. And now it's different with masks, but if it's another thing, you think, oh, it might be. Oh, I'd be uncomfortable if that cookie fell on the floor. Oh, let's drop it. Let's drop it on purpose. You drop it and you eat it and you're fine. And so that's what I keep doing as well.
That's great. Really, are there any other things that you learned during therapy that you apply now to keep yourself well?
Yes, I think so. A big problem with BDD and OCD as well, both, is intrusive thoughts, and they can really linger, and sort of catastrophizing as well. So I think, oh, it's going to be horrible. It's going to be. I used to do that in my life even before, with other aspects as well. And I think a lot of us, especially with stressful times now with COVID and stressful things, we tend to do it a lot, catastrophizing, it's going to be horrible. And I think it's just sort of a bit of pragmatism, but also a bit of just letting them pass. And I had this method, and it doesn't work for everyone, but it worked for me, and I had the method of like leaves on a river. So each thought is a leaf, and it falls on the river, and you're sitting you're looking at the river, and you see the thoughts pass by. And then they pass by, and then they leave. They're gone out of your head, right? whereas an intrusive thought just stays. But a leaf can't really stay when the river's flowing, right? So if you just imagine your thoughts as leaves and just let them pass by, and it's fine to just sort of lay there, think about something else, do something else, distract yourself. You just sort of realize, just let the thought, not evil, but the intrusive thought just come away out of your body. And I have used it since, when I've been stressed for exams, for university, for, personal relationships, family matters, and you just think, oh, what's going to happen? What am I going to do? And you just think, just relax, and it's going to get better. And the thought just leaves, and you feel instantly better. And once you do feel better, then you can actually think of ways to solve the problem, because it's quite hard to solve a problem when your head has got the intrusive thought that's just stopping the solution. But if you let it go away, then 9 times out of 10 you will be able to solve it. Probably 10 times out of 10 you will find something that helps you get over it.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Can you think of other bits of advice or tips, or even just words of comfort that you would give to someone who's feeling as bad as you were when your BDD was really at its worst?
Yes, it's going to get better. You might think it won't. I thought I was going to be, I thought I was going to be ill for the rest of my life. And I was planning, I was in my head, my mindset was, that's it, I'm going to be ill for the rest of my life. But you won't, you will get better. And it took about 2 years, 3 years for me. It might take longer, it might take less. But the point is, it's going to get better. There are people out there who care, and they're not judging you. That's the other thing, especially on appearance worries. You think people are judging you, they're not judging you. And if they do say they judge you, then that's not the general populace isn't doing it. And if people do say it, then really have to think about who those people in your life are who are saying that they judge you, and whether you should keep them in your life. Because if they know that you have body image issues, and even if they don't, I don't think it's just nice to go someone, oh, I don't think you look good. It's just not. I mean, friends say that. It's just not,
No.
And so most people, and I'd say 99% of people, don't judge you, especially in how you look like. And so it's just, and the problem is that you really need to be happy with yourself, and realize that sometimes, even if the people who do judge you, just ignore them. And I know it's hard, but I think the problem is that if you're happy with yourself, then you can realize that I don't care what other people think, because I know that I'm beautiful, and I know that I'm okay with how I look, and I actually like how I look. And so whatever they say doesn't matter, because that's their problem, frankly. Because I know, so if someone comes up and goes, oh, you look dreadful, I go, great, don't look at me then. That's your problem. I know I don't. And so if you think you do, you can deal with it. I won't. And it's the same with everyone. And just believe in yourself and know that it will get better. And
absolutely.
Reach out. That's the other thing. Reach out. Don't be afraid of reaching out. I was really scared of telling my parents. I was really scared of telling my mom, my dad, my friends, because I thought they'd judge me. I thought they'd laugh at me. And I thought that they would think that I was weak, and that I was, I wasn't strong and I could do it on my own. No one, it's an incredibly, and people go, oh, like, if you broke a leg, would you just hide it? You wouldn't, right? And it's a stigma, but it is the same. It's probably more serious because it's in your brain, right? The most important part of your body, it's the heart, but you get what I mean. And it's reaching out. The first step is just reaching out and accepting that you do have a problem, but it's not you, it's the illness, right? And so that's the first step. And so getting help it's not shameful. It's not the coward's way. It's really actually the bravest thing to do is getting help, because it's facing the problem. And that's the first step. And once you get that, you're on your way to getting better.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And you've ended on perfect timing there. Thanks, Elias, so much. It's lovely to chat to you. It's such a positive, inspirational story. Well. Thanks a million.
No worries.
Thanks again to Elias for all his great insights and positive encouragement for people struggling with BDD. To hear more episodes, just search for Beating BDD on major podcast apps and on Spotify. You can also leave us feedback by following the BDD Foundation on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube and Facebook. I'll be back with another interview soon. In the meantime, remember that this podcast isn't therapy, so please do seek help from a trained professional. Thanks for listening.